All right, so we're back in Photoshop, and so we created a selection around Moose and then went into select and mask and refined the mask. I also showed you all that you could, within that mask, just kind of show you what you can do with the background layer on and your selection, that you can modify the selection with a layer mask. I'm going to Command Z that because there's actually a non-destructive way. So that would have been a destructive edit that we just did. If I had saved the file and closed it, I wouldn't have been able to come back and change him back to his natural color. So there's a better way to do this, and that's using I'm going to move my little thing over here, an adjustment layer. So we're going to talk about adjustment layers inside of the layer masks tool. So you can get to the adjustments by the adjustment panel that looks like a little yin and yang panel here. And you can see that at the top, these all have to do with making adjustments to the kind of the levels. So we've got brightness contrast levels, which you can adjust from your highlight, shadows, and midtones. Curves does something very similar. It's a better tool. It's probably my favorite tool out of this grouping. And then the exposure tool, and then the vibrance tool, which is related to saturation but is not saturation. Then you've got hue and saturation, color balance, black and white, photo filters, channel mixer, and color lookup. You also have the invert adjustment, posterization. So these are a little bit more creative, and a gradient map tool, and then selective color adjustment tool. So we're going to mainly be dealing with from brightness contrast to hue saturation. Um, but you can pick any of these and play around with them and see what they do. They are non-destructive edits. You also can get to these in the layers panel. There's the same little yin and yang symbol, or similar to a yin and yang symbol that's there, and you can see that you can get to all of the grouping. So from brightness to exposure, to vibrance, to color lookup, to invert, to selective color. And then you also can create solid layers, patterns, or gradients, which would create a brand new layer. So if I wanted to make a gradient layer, I could do that, and it creates a whole new layer. I'm going to turn that off because I'm not going to throw it away. I'm going to turn it off because we might look at it later. So I'm going to create that same, because I was using the color or hue and saturation tool. So I'm going to go into hue and saturation, and I'm going to put it on top. I'm going to drag it. You can reorder these. So I'm going to put it right on top of the background copy, which is of Moose. Then I'm going to come in here and double click on this, and I will open my properties, which I can't see because this is not docked. So I'm going to put that there. So I'm inside my adjustments. This has all gotten kind of messed up from me moving things around. So right now I'm being able to see my properties panel along with my layers panel. So you want to be able to see both. So now that I'm in the properties, I'm inside hue and saturation. I can then make that adjustment. And I'm going to do something kind of extreme like we did the last time, where I colorize it and turn it blue. But notice that when I do that, it's affecting both the background copy and the background. So everything underneath it is going to get affected. So I really only want the selection of Moose to get affected here. So I am going to come back in. I'm going to pick the color that I want him to be, maybe saturate it a little bit. I don't like using lightness, darkness. It's not a great tool. So I'm going to zero that out. But then, over here, what I can do, you can see that if I just drag that hue saturation, then it's only affecting the background and the puppy's not affected. But let's say I want to just have the puppies affected, but not the background. What I can do is see my cursor. That's the little hand. It's a little pointed hand here, like that. If I hover in between these two, the background, or I'm sorry, between hue and saturation and the background copy, if I hover just on that line and then hold the Alt Option key down, you'll see that it turns into a little square with a down pointing arrow on the left-hand side. That is the clipping mask tool. So I click that button, and now I can see that I've got that little down pointing arrow, which is telling me that this layer is clipped to the background copy. To be able to do that, they obviously need to be stacked on one and top another. So I can turn that gradient on if I want to after that. That's on the top, and I can do an overlay. Oops, I'm in the wrong. So I'm going to reach in, make sure I'm in the correct tool. So soft light, multiply, color burn, darken. Just see, it's not doing a whole lot because of the color, but you can see, like, as we go through, because it's a light yellow color, as we go through, it makes adjustments, it shifts depending on the blending mode. So blending modes are really nice to use, and I can turn that on and off and see what that blending mode does. So there's a lot of different things that you can do with your layers. You can actually shift the opacity of these different layers. So you can change the blending mode. So I could have this set to multiply, or color burn, or overlay, or lighten color, which doesn't, some of them don't seem like they do anything because it's on the particular kind of mixing of colors that you've got going on. So I just changed him. He looks a little soft now. So maybe I'll, lower that mix, bring that back on. So now I've got this kind of acidic look. I can even open this back up and say, I don't love that. Maybe I can change the color of my gradient to something that's a little bit nicer, that's going to help join everything together. And since I use some of that purpley color in the other, I can do that there and click OK. And now I've got a little bit nicer of a mix and with the whole thing. So just some really quick, fun things that you can do, but these are all non-destructive edits that are going to be saved with the file. So once I save this file, and it's going to be so I'm going to name this Moose PSD, Moose 2, because there's also already a Moose 1. So Moose 2 PSD, I'm going to save that. It's going to save as a Photoshop file. And when it saves as a Photoshop file, that means that it's going to save that with all of the layers and information. So if I close this and I open it back up, I can open that file, and now I can see that I have all these layers. I can make adjustments to this. I can turn off colorize and make him different color here. I can adjust the layer mask or the adjustment layer and the gradient. I can do that and change it something blue, maybe a little turquoise, I don't know. wouldn't do any of this necessarily, but these are some things that you can do. And these are all non-destructive edits that are saved with the file, which is the really important thing. So if I don't like any of these, I can either delete them, adjust them, or modify them in another way.